Welcome back to PC Builder. I'm Jason. This is PC news for July, and wow, all the CPUs seem to be failing. But what does this mean for you if you own one of these CPUs or if you're looking to build or buy now? And there's new evidence that NVIDIA is pushing back the RTX 5090 and 5080 into 2025? What does this mean for gamers, especially those hoping for a next generation mid-range GPU like an RTX 5070? Remember, if you get value out of this video, give it a like because it really helps out the channel, and of course subscribe for more cool PC content. With that, let's jump into it. This video is sponsored by VIP SCD Key. Say goodbye to crazy expensive Windows licenses and that terrible Activate Windows watermark. Right now, use the links in the video description, head over to VIP SCD Key and get a Windows 10 or 11 OEM license for a great price. Pick your product license, then use the PC Builder discount code PC25 for an additional 25% off. Go to the activation settings on your PC, put in the code, and boom! Windows is fully licensed for a crazy low price. And Windows 10 can be upgraded for free to Windows 11. And they have Microsoft Office licenses too. Use the links in the video description. Let's start off with AMD pulling their CPUs from retail ahead of the expected July 31st launch of Ryzen 9000. Now I'm going to start with their statement, which we received by email. AMD writes that, quote, "We appreciate the excitement around Ryzen 9000 series processors. During final checks, we found the initial production units that were shipped to our channel partners did not meet our full quality expectations. Out of an abundance of caution and to maintain the highest quality experiences for every Ryzen user, we're working with our channel partners to replace the initial production units with fresh units. As a result, there will be a short delay in retail availability. The Ryzen 7 9700X and Ryzen 5 9600X processors will now go on sale on August 8th, and the Ryzen 9 9950X and Ryzen 9 9900X processors will go on sale on August 15th. We pride ourselves in providing a high-quality experience for every Ryzen user, and we look forward to our fans having a great experience with the new Ryzen 9000 series." AMD added some additional information later in terms of the release for reviews, which will be posted the day before. So August 7th for the Ryzen 9600X and 9700X is going to be the review date, and August 14th for the Ryzen 9950X and 9900X is going to be their review date. Okay, so what does all this mean? Well, I actually think this is a good thing. In fact, it's a really good thing. With some essentially bad CPUs out there mixed in, AMD could have just allowed these CPUs to be sold at retail, said nothing, and then quietly RMA'd the bad ones, but only if a customer put in the request because their CPU wasn't really performing. This is essentially the let's see if we can get away with it scenario that too many companies sadly pursue, hoping that they just don't get caught, and if they do get caught, then they try and limit the damage after the fact. Now, instead, AMD's taking the responsible move that honestly we should expect of any company out there, and they're saying publicly that, hey, we know some of our products out there aren't up to spec, so we're gonna pull every single last one of them, we're gonna retest and recertify them, and we're only gonna send back the good ones to sell to our customers. And I think as a consumer advocate, I'd rather companies take this approach of let's get it right, even if we have to delay and make sure we get the customer the best product. Of course, the one thing we don't have yet from AMD, pricing for the Ryzen 9000 series CPUs. Like, how much are these things actually gonna cost us? And this is really strange. This is the first time I think in any of their Ryzen launches that I can remember, even any CPU launch really, that we haven't really known the price this close to the launch, which is totally crazy to me. Hopefully AMD is gonna release that soon. And if you've taken a look at pricing recently for like the Ryzen 7000 series, even the Ryzen 5000, the older generation CPUs, you can see all those discounts that AMD had been layering on top, which made like the Ryzen 7600 so cheap down to $170, made the 7800X3D so cheap down to like $330. All those discounts have essentially evaporated. Now, the 7600X has not gone to $299 again. It's closer to $200. In fact, it's $199 as I'm filming this right now. Clearly, they're removing those discounts in order to kind of force you to buy the Ryzen 9000 series CPUs, not have that big of a price gap. You're like, well, why would I get the 7600 for $200 when I can get this one for $240? Now, hopefully, that's not a harbinger of higher prices from AMD, but we're going to have to wait and see. Now, let's talk about the opposite issue we've got with Intel, where I don't have any concrete information on their motives, but their actions seem to indicate that they're taking a very different approach than AMD has. Now, reports began to surface quite some time ago about unstable CPUs in Intel's Raptor Lake-based 13th and 14th generation CPUs. And initially the problems, they seem to be limited to the 13th and 14th gen i9 CPUs, but additional reporting a couple months later by Gamers Nexus, Level 1 Techs, and others started to expand out the CPUs in question to possibly include all of the Raptor Lake architecture CPUs, including things like the i5-13600K. Now, Intel's initial response in April, honestly, it seemed pretty good, with Intel releasing a statement discussing some possible causes and what users might do right now, having several of their board partners release a new Intel baseline power spec in the BIOS updates, and saying that they're going to issue another full statement regarding the root cause in May. Well, then it really went off a cliff, because May, then June, then almost all of July came and went. We didn't hear much from Intel, not even a like, hey, we're still looking into this, here's our progress report, here's our new deadline kind of statement. That is until additional reporting by Level 1 Techs, Gamers Nexus, and others stating the problem, it might be a lot bigger than originally thought, and that all the 13th and 14th gen CPUs should be avoided until Intel does something substantive. Now, Gamers Nexus also alluded to a couple potential causes for the failures that they were investigating, including an issue with manufacturing, which would probably not be solvable by just putting out a new BIOS update. I'll leave links to their very excellent reporting down in the video description, and I recommend everybody watch them. So we also put out a statement saying to stay away from any of the Raptor Lake CPUs. And note that not all 13th and 14th gen CPUs are actually Raptor Lake, like the 13400, for instance, which is really a downclocked and locked i5-12600K of the Alder Lake design. But it was only after the additional reporting that called everything into question that Intel finally broke its silence, and they said the issues were related to the CPU microcode telling the motherboard to supply too much voltage to the CPU at certain times, what they called elevated voltage in their initial statement, which I will leave linked down in the video description if you want to read it. In Intel's usual bizarre fashion, they then posted a reply on Reddit saying the oxidation in the manufacturing process was not a cause of the issues, but maybe it actually is a cause of some of the issues. Totally confusing. And if your head is spinning at that, you're not alone. Of course, when it was pointed out that Intel was contradicting itself in its own denial, they later edited the post to now say that there's a small number of instability reports connected to the manufacturing issue. So the solution, Intel says, is going to come in the form of a BIOS update that's going to come sometime in mid-August, which Intel says will update the microcode to essentially just no longer pump too much voltage into the CPU. And they did add that this seems to be limited to desktop CPUs, not laptop ones. Of course, a BIOS update, that really doesn't address the oxidation issue in the manufacturing process. So if that's your problem, I'm not sure what you're supposed to do other than maybe RMA it. And at this point, I think Intel no longer has the benefit of the doubt, and they need to demonstrate the fix actually works before anybody should buy one of their Raptor Lake-based CPUs. So a lot of this is kind of industry drama, but a lot of this is also what should you do as a consumer? Out of abundance of caution, if you do own any 12th, 13th, or 14th gen Intel CPU, I would immediately update your motherboard BIOS to the latest non-beta version and apply Intel's default power profile in the BIOS menu. I'd also recommend that you keep an eye out for another BIOS update to go live in the next couple of weeks and apply that as soon as it's out of beta. Then typically there's going to be a further refinement, maybe even several further refinements in the BIOS. So I would at least monthly check back and see if there's a new BIOS to update to whatever the latest non-beta version is. If you were thinking of buying a 13th or 14th gen Intel CPU based on the Raptor Lake architecture, I'd likely go ahead and just wait or buy a Ryzen CPU. Specifically, the CPUs I'd be most concerned about are the Raptor Lake architecture ones. So all the 13th and 14th gen i9 and i7 CPUs, along with the i5-13600, 14600, 13500, and 14500 CPUs. Now this includes all their desktop variants such as K, KF, F, etc. Note that any 13th and 14th gen CPUs below these, so like the i5-13400 for instance, it's essentially recycled 12th gen, which is the Alder Lake architecture, the older architecture. Now that doesn't mean that these CPUs aren't also potentially impacted, but nobody's directly indicating that Alder Lake based CPUs, not even like the i9-12900K, are having a problem. So it seems like this is reduced risk, though I'd still update the BIOS as I outlined. And if even that makes you uncomfortable, then Ryzen CPUs are right there and available. I think as we look back at this thing, we've seen that Intel clearly has dropped the ball in this process, whether it's just because they realized the problem was so big that they got freaked out at how many CPUs they might have to recall or how many CPUs might be impacted out there, or they just as a bureaucratic thing, the left hand often doesn't know what the right hand is doing in an organization the size of Intel. that kind of bureaucracy and incompetence out there, it's not a good look for Intel. And I think I've gone on at length how badly we need competition in the CPU and GPU space in order to get effective, not only improve the technology for consumers and what we're getting, but also pay a fair price for it. And every time this happens, you got to think that AMD's just in the background, just, oh yeah, okay, well, we were going to do these prices, but we haven't announced them yet. So the price just went up, you know. I absolutely hate it. And I really hope Intel fixes this thing as quickly as possible at this point, be completely transparent about the fix, and for Arrow Lake CPUs really says, oh, maybe we need to get way more competitive. I do want to add a quick note about early adopter issues, which we often gloss over, especially on the tech community. Now, I cannot remember a single CPU launch where we didn't discover what we often call early adopter issues. Now, these are more minor bugs that were not caught in the initial quality assurance phase, and often you can't even find them until the product is rolled out in huge numbers, right? And these are often in the form of like RAM instability, storage drives not showing up in the BIOS, incorrect boosting behaviors, weird power usage issues, just other kinds of general stability issues. And they almost always get fixed over time, but there is just this, wait for the next gen kind of mentality that assumes when the next generation comes out, it's going to work as well at launch as the current generation alternatives that have already gone through this kind of maturation process. And this expectation, it just doesn't align with reality. So keep that in mind as you decide whether to buy now or you wait for the next generation to release. We also have a new rumor that NVIDIA RTX 5000 series GPUs are going to be fully pushed back into 2025. Now, Copite7Kimi, it's a well-known leaker on the website formerly known as Twitter. Now, Copite has nailed a lot of leaks, and they decided to leak the RTX 50 series GPUs, including the RTX 5090 and 5080, which we had expected this year, 2024. They're going to slip into 2025, and they simply said, I think we won't see RTX 50 until CES. And that refers to the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. It's held every year in January, and the next one is obviously January 2025. Now, the rumors around RTX 50 series, they've been crazy this year, with initial reports suggesting it would only launch in 2025. Then we got rumors that NVIDIA decided to at least accelerate the announcement of it because it's based on the same architecture as their new AI GPUs, which were also accelerated. And then we got rumors that the launch would be pushed back to the fall of 2024 because the current US government AI sanctions would not allow the 5090 to be launched into China. And that's a huge market for NVIDIA out there. And that NVIDIA decided to delay it, which would allow the 5080 to launch first so they could do a global launch and not offend the Chinese market. But given NVIDIA's intense focus on AI,
robotics is here, physical AI is here, this is not science fiction, and it's being used all over Taiwan. It's just really, really exciting.
And the fact that they are making way more money selling AI GPUs, and that market seems to be absolutely exploding in profits for them, it's not surprising to hear that the RTX 50 series gaming GPUs might be taking a back seat and being pushed back into 2025. But as always, we'll have to wait and see. If RTX 50 series delays depress you, you might be excited to hear another rumor, also from Copite, that NVIDIA is working on a new Titan-class GPU for the RTX 50 series. Now, Copite, in their usual cryptic fashion, just says, quote, the big thing exists, in a response to a tweet from Video Cards asking for plans about a new Titan. Now, it's not clear what exactly this would be, especially given that the 90 series cards like the RTX 3090 and RTX 4090 were already considered super extreme and super expensive. The last Titan card we got was during the RTX 20 series back in 2018. NVIDIA also worked up plans for an RTX 40 series Titan GPU, but reportedly canceled them. And likely because it felt the RTX 4090 already filled this role, and AMD's $1,000 MSRP RX 7900 XTX, well, faster than the RTX 4080, it wasn't able to challenge the already $1,600 RTX 4090. So will NVIDIA launch a Titan-class RTX 50 series with AMD's top-end GPUs for RX 8000 series reportedly canceled, and NVIDIA's almost singular focus on AI GPUs? From a business perspective, it doesn't seem like it's going to make a lot of sense, so I would probably lean towards probably not, but we'll have to wait and see. Let me know if you like this news format, if you like us to do it more often. In total, complete transparency, this was not our planned content for the weekend. We had some other plans, and AMD kind of decided to kind of kick those down the road with their delay of the Ryzen 9000 series CPU. So we kind of threw this together based on the current news right now. Obviously, in the future, we could also go into other stories if you like. Let me know down in the comments what you think about this. If you got value out of this video, please give it a like. It makes a huge difference to the channel. And of course, subscribe. Click that bell icon. That way you get notified when we release cool PC content. And we'll catch you on the next one.